One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
Hello and welcome to Love Samantha Lee, the More Than Just Pretty podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Lee, and here we explore love, life, spirituality, and relationships through the lens of real beauty, the kind that begins the moment you decide to be unapologetically yourself. Join us as we dive into heartfelt discussions that challenge us, inspire us, and connect us. Are you ready? Are you ready to embrace your true self? Let's begin. What's up, family? It's your girl, Samantha Lee. And here, today's episode is appropriately titled, Is This Me or Is This God? Now, last week's episode, I dived into my mindset relating to the thorn in my flesh. I heard a sermon on a Sunday and it rocked my world. And I spent time trying to figure out what the thorn in my flesh was. Was it what I was hoping for? Was it, what was it? What was the thorn in my flesh? And what I found was that doubt was indeed the thorn in my flesh, that every time I made a decision and I was standing in faith, doubt was right there, ready to steal the seed that God was sowing into my spirit. Whether it was because it took longer than I anticipated, whether because there was unforeseen obstacles or challenges that I did not see coming. And I'm like, God, is this you? Because I thought this was you. And here we go. We're going through this challenge. We're going through that. I don't know if this is you. I don't know if this is you. Like, I'm going through all those different things. And doubt was right there, ready to steal, kill, and destroy, because the promise was making me excited, but the doubt was giving me anxiety. And again, that's what the enemy is. Very, very conniving, family. He just really is. He knows your triggers. He knows how to get to you. And so you have to be very mindful. I think sometimes what I've learned is that a lot of us that are in the faith, we're a little bit more confident than we should be in hearing God. We're like, oh, God told me this. And like, there are times in your life where you will have to stand in faith on your own about certain things, right? That is 100% true. Noah was told to build the ark. It may not have made sense to anybody else in his life or around him, but God told him to build an ark. And there was not a cloud in the sky, and they had not seen rain. So yes, it looked crazy to everyone around him, but he still was faithful in building the ark, no matter what it looked like. And if you guys know the story, it took him 75 years to build the ark. And I think it was like 120 years before the rain actually came. So he waited for a long time to see the promise fulfilled, right? So a lot of times in those processes and in those moments, you do have to have a sense of, I'm hearing from God and no one else is going to understand. No one else is going to be able to speak to this leg of the journey, because what God is speaking to me is so specific that no one else is going to understand it. And I get that. But in the beginning of making a decision, we have to go through the appropriate steps if we're trying to figure out if it's God or if it's you or if it's the enemy, right? And so when it comes down to understanding whether it's you or God, you have to fast. Okay, that's number one. When we don't really have clarity, if it's a big decision, you fast and you pray. right? And you continue to like lay down before God. You do what, when I say fasting, some people just say, oh, I'm just not going to eat, or I'm not going to do this, but they're not praying. They're not looking into the word. They're not actually trying to find the answer. They're just doing the act of not doing whatever they have given up for a fast, but they're not taking the appropriate steps in fasting. Fasting is not just you not eating. It's when what times you would normally eat, you're praying, you're searching for answers, you're looking at sermons, and you literally wait on God. You literally spend time with God. And a lot of people don't do that. They just go about their day-to-day processes and they're like, oh, okay, well, God's going to speak to me. Well, it's almost like if I'm having a conversation with somebody in the car and I put my music on 50, I'm not going to have a great conversation with that person in the car, even if they're sitting right next to me, because my world is so loud. It's the same thing with God. How can he possibly get any messages to you if you're just in your day-to-day life and the only thing you're not doing is not eating? But you don't have quiet time with him to really hear him when he's telling you to do something. A lot of times, because we feel strongly about something, we feel like that's God. And no, that's not necessarily true. The Bible says our heart is deceitful above all things. It is sick and desperately wicked. Who can understand it? That means that our hearts can mislead us. In a lot of times it does, right? We can feel very strongly about this or about that, and then we are challenged with it, or something occurs and then we're like, oh, dang, that might not have been God. Our hearts can lead us right into a brick wall sometimes, family. So that's why it's very important for us to fast, to pray. And when you're having that fasting and you're doing and you're praying and you're trying to really hear God and seek his face about an answer, which is super wise, you've got to create the quiet time for him to speak as well. Journal, just do something to be able to hear God and make sure you're hearing him correctly, right? In addition to that, you have to submit and surrender yourself to wise counsel. And I'm not saying wise counsel as in they're very smart people or they your mama or your daddy, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that speak faith, that speak in the same language of faith that you do, that have a relationship with God the way you do, or you're trying to. People that are further in faith, not people that are further in wisdom of the world. Because if we're trying to do something and we're trying to hear God, speaking to people that don't hear God or do not live their life abiding by what God is telling them to do are not the people that you use as your wise counsel. You got to go to people that you know speak the language of faith the way you do or the way you're trying to. A lot of us, we go off of our own inclination or our own promptings, and we're so independent and we don't want to be told anything. We don't want to consider another opinion because we feel so strongly. And then we move too fast and we miss God. Because we think we feel strongly, that means that's God putting that on your spirit. No, that might be you. This might not be the time, but you allowed your heart to lead you down a path that now you're praying for God to take you out of, or even worse, you're blaming God for when God didn't tell you that. They ain't got nothing to do with God. That was you. That was you making a decision. That was you saying, I feel strongly about this and going in this direction. And now you're facing the consequences of an action you decided to take. So before we even get to that process, make sure you're surrounded by godly counsel, people that can hold you accountable to the things that you do. Don't be so caught up in what you want to do and how you see things going and why this makes sense for you that you don't listen to anybody else. That's what I've noticed a lot in the faith. It's like, oh, well, God told me this. Okay, cool. God told you that, but did you fast? Did you hold yourself accountable? Did you talk to anybody about this? Because we are misled. It is easy for us to be misled. It is easy for us to get caught up in our thoughts and be misled by our own feelings. I probably do the worst job in this because I tell too many people. Like I want so badly to be right or make the right decision that sometimes it looks like stagnation because I don't want to be wrong so badly. I don't want to be wrong.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say, ahoy, or land ho, and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.
So there's a medium ground here where it's like, okay, you submitted to wise counsel, somebody that you trust in the faith that's further along than you are, not as far, or just speaks the language, but you don't see the fruit, right? You want somebody that's further along that you can trust where they are in their walk, right? And so that's first step. That's first step, or well, first, second, and third step is really like fasting, praying, holding yourself accountable, and then really like reading the scripture, understanding what the Bible says, right? Not everything that we deal with in today's world is going to be found in the Bible, but there are principles that are found in the Bible that can sometimes help us weed out decisions that we're making. We can't pick and choose scriptures. You know, there might be, for some people, it might be, a relationship, right, that you're struggling with. And it's like, we walk by faith and not by sight. And we use this verse all willy-nilly when God is not calling you to do that. You just took a verse out of context and didn't really try to understand the whole picture of what God could be trying to tell you, right? So there's a sense of surrender that you have to have, a heart posture that you have to have in order to not be deceived. Because family, one thing I've learned is that it is very easy to be deceived. That if you are not surrendered and you are not spending time with God, it is very, very easy to be deceived. And I'm not saying that to scare you. I really am not, because if you're spending time with God and you're reading the scriptures and you're having that quiet time with him, it's less likely for you to be deceived. But you have to know it is very easy to be deceived. I'm learning that as I've been deceived. Right? I'm learning that okay, so this is what this prompting meant. This is what this meant. This is what that meant. Like, I'm learning on the job, which is why I'm expressing this to you. Okay, so here's some other things that I've learned in this journey. Is this me, or is this God, or is it the enemy? Now, the enemy is trying to steal, kill, and destroy anything that God is trying to get you to do. Right? So the enemy is going to speak in a way that causes you to spin, to get lost in anxiety, to be confused, to feel negative about yourself, to doubt yourself. He's going to speak in a way that in your spirit, you feel a negative. You feel a negative. There's a level of confusion. It could even be like, yes, pursue this relationship, but pursuing the relationship makes you feel negative. It gives you anxiety and the what if and the confusion, and you're spinning. And it's like, okay, this can't be God. Because if God is leading you in a direction, there's going to be peace. But if the enemy is leading you in a direction and he's telling you to do something like get back into a relationship, go get the job, go sell the house, go do these different acts, go buy the car, go do this, go do that, there's going to be a sense of underlying peace about it if it's God. Now, if it's the enemy, there's going to be confusion, there's going to be spinning, there's going to be disruption. Even when God is calling you to do something, even when it's challenging, you have peace. When you retreat to him, that doesn't mean the doubts don't come. That doesn't mean you don't start questioning. But when you retreat to the Father, there is a peace that comes in until you'll hear another voice and it tries to steal the seed of faith or the seed of hope or whatever you have. What I find is that when it's our voice that is speaking, we are going to speak in the voice of rational, right? Worldly logic. God does not explain himself. You can go through any scripture in the Bible. When God calls you to do something, he does not explain himself. When you take a leap of faith, he'll give you a little bit more insight. But he does not one that's like, okay, go do this because you're going to do this and it's going to do that and it's going to be this. When there's a because, when there's a rationale, when it's a worldly rationale, that's a sign that's you. Oh, I'm going to pursue this relationship because once I do, then it's going to be this and then we're going to do that. And that's going to make a lot of sense because of this. No, that's you. You're rationalizing. You're making this logical. Most times when God is speaking, it's never logical, right? It's not based on worldly logic. It's based on spiritual kingdom logic, which is, the Bible says is high. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. So even it's not going to, what he's asking us to do is not going to make sense to us. If it makes too much sense to you, it probably isn't God. I know that might shake somebody's tree today, and I'm not trying to shake your tree. Of course, go pray about it. But most times when you hear a God thing, it's going to look crazy to everybody around you, including you. Like you're rationalizing it. Your ability to explain it to somebody else and it makes sense. Okay, God told you to leave the job, but you don't have another job. That sounds crazy. But you feel a conviction in your spirit that is what you should do. And you submit yourself and surrender yourself to godly counsel, and they pray on it, or they pray on it with you, or they go with the prompting in the spirit, and they're going to say something that either confirms or convicts, not condemns. What most people do is that they have this prompting and they move. And it's like, okay, well, you got to go through process. You got to go through process. And until you go through process, you can't say it was God definitively, because our mind is, as I said, but last week, but our minds are battlefields. There's a lot coming at us at one time. It's very, very hard to hear clearly unless you're intentionally trying to do so. There's so many competing interests within you that it's hard to really decipher what is what. What is speaking? Is fear speaking? Because a lot of times it'd be fear that's speaking. Anxiety that's speaking. Overwhelm that's speaking. Fear of failure that's speaking. Fear of vulnerability that's speaking. There's a lot of voices that sound very much like they could be God, but it's fear. Fear of the unknown. And you take this leap trying to avoid something and you make it God, and it's not God. Right? So again, what I've learned, worldly logic, when it's based on rationale, worldly logic, oh, because this, God do that. In the Bible, if you read it, God says, Abraham, leave where you're from. He don't say why. He don't say who gonna be there on the way. He don't say, oh, the land's gonna be cheaper out there. You gonna have a steal. He don't tell him nothing. He just says, go. When Joseph had the dream, he didn't know what context that was going to be, when that would happen. He didn't know. He just knew that he had a dream where his stock was up and his brother's stock was bound down to him. He had no idea what that meant. He had no clarity on what type of dream or how that was going to manifest in his life. All he knew was he had a dream. God don't get hemmed up on details. God tells you something. And it's up to you whether or not you do it or you don't. And a lot of times what people do is that they make a decision based upon their promptings. They think it's God and they move like it is God and then get mad at God because it didn't go the way they thought it would. No, that was you. That was you. I'm sorry. That was you. You chose that relationship. You chose to make that move. You chose to do whatever that is. That was you. And you try to make it God and it wasn't God. Now, God can make all things good and God is a redeemer. And even in our mistakes, he is sovereign. But if we don't take the time to really understand if it is God, I'm here to tell you it is very, very hard to determine who is speaking what. That's why I'm doing this whole podcast episode. Because I understand that. I'm learning that on the fly. That normally the enemy, when he speaks to me, is like trying to steal the hope that I have. He's trying to steal the dream that I have. He's saying are you sure? I don't know. You don't have no proof. You don't have no evidence. Blah, 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 blah. Because when God asks you to move, family, it is faith. It is a faith walk. It's not an immediate return. It is not instant gratification. It is delayed gratification, meaning that you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to make this move and immediately I'm going to get the result that I desire. That is not God. That is you. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get this back. That is you. That is not God. God does not give you, he doesn't work like that. He doesn't work with, oh, you do this and you're going to get that. No, he wants you to move on faith and in reverence to him. So you'll make a move not knowing what results you're going to get back. Some of y'all be making moves and you're like, oh, I'm going to get this result back. I'm going to get this back. That's you. That is you creating a narrative and then trying to stick that to God. When God calls us to do things, it is purely one step. I think there's a quote by Martin Luther King where it talks about how you take the first step when you don't know what the rest of the staircase looks like. Let me look it up. I don't want to misquote Martin Luther King. Let me see. Faith is when you staircase. I got to find this. Hold on. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And faith sometimes, family, I think we make it very complex. Although faith is something that is like, I believe this is going to happen. You move in your life as if it's going to happen. Like it's not, there's people that say, I have faith that my wife is coming, right? Or I have faith that my husband's coming. Cool. Okay. What steps are you making in your life that reflects the faith that you say that you have? I've met people that say they have faith for this, but they're dating everybody that comes around them, even when they know in their heart and in their spirit, that person isn't their wife or that person isn't their husband, because there's going to be a deep resonance. There's going to be an intuitive knowing that comes with, I've just gotten in contact with somebody that's supposed to mean something to me. When people, they're like, oh, I know, I have a feeling, I'm not sure. That's not God. God is a God of clarity. God is not a God of confusion. A lot of times that confusion can be us trying to talk ourselves out of what we feel. That is very true. But a lot of times we have a deep knowing. And I'm not talking about the head anxiety knowing. It's like this deep knowing that God is repetitive. He's going to say the same thing over and over again until you take that step. He's going to keep kind of hitting you with the same instruction. That's the word I'm looking for. The same instruction until you move on it. That's how he does it. And so what happens is that you meet somebody and you know deep down inside this ain't your wife. Or you know deep down inside this ain't your husband. We know. There's a deep knowing. And because they might be a good candidate or because they meet certain check marks, we try to pass over that feeling and explain this and how this makes sense to you instead of walking in the faith that you say that you have. Meaning you meet this girl and she's pretty and she's smart and she says she got a relationship with God, but there's just something inside you that just ain't with it. There's just something that you just can't explain. And you're like, you know what? I'm tripping. Let me just pass over. Let me just try. Let me just, because that's what our culture tells us to do. Our culture tells us that we should settle, that there's not enough options for us. It says a scarcity mindset. Why? Because it's based on fear. Where does fear? Who speaks in fear? Who speaks in deception? Who speaks that language? The enemy. So we settle in wildernesses because it's comfortable. We settle in wilderness because we're in control. We settle and we pass over the feelings that we know we feel because we're afraid. Why are we afraid? We're afraid of what we do not know. And then we make it God and we try to explain it to ourselves and rationalize it to ourselves. And then we say, oh, I'm a man, I'm a woman of faith. No, you're not. You're actually not. You're not. You move in comfort. You move in convenience. You move according to what you think makes sense to you. And y'all, this is not to come down on anybody because this is what God came at me with. This is how God confronted me. I am not any better than anybody that's listening to me right now. But this is how he broke it down to me. Like, no, that's not faith. When you still dating options that you know ain't it, that's not faith. Because you don't see the person, you stay where you are, that's not faith. Faith is, no, that ain't it, I'm waiting on the one. No, that ain't it, I'm waiting on the one. That doesn't mean you don't give nobody a shot, but it does mean once you have a deep knowing that this isn't the person, you move on. You don't hold on to it knowing that that's not it. That is not faith. God speaks in the language of faith. We speak in the language of rational, comfortable, what's in our control, what makes sense to us. That's how we speak. And the enemy speaks in the tone of pressure. Do it now, do it now, do it now. When you feel like you rushing to make a decision, there's actually a video, or I'm going to say, I'm gonna actually, I saw the video, so I'm gonna make sure I get this. Okay. So recognizing the voice of the enemy. The enemy's voice will rush you. The enemy's voice will push you. The enemy's voice will frighten you. The enemy's voice will confuse you. The enemy's voice will discourage you. The enemy's voice will worry you. The enemy's voice will condemn you. I'm gonna say that again. The enemy will rush you. The enemy will push you. The enemy will frighten you. The enemy will confuse you. The enemy will discourage you. The enemy will worry you, and the enemy will condemn you. When you feel rushed to make a decision, like you've got to do it now, you've got to do it right now, you got to make the decision right, that's the enemy. The enemy will push you into making decisions, rush you into making decisions. I remember hearing Joyce Meyer before saying, whenever she feels pressured, she walks away from the situation because she knows it's not God. God doesn't pressure you. He don't rush you. That's not how he moves. Now, there are times where his voice will be louder, and especially when you abide in him and he abides in you, it does get a little bit more intense, but it's never to the point where you feel like you've got to make a decision right now. You have the anxiety of making the decision right then and there. He's just like, I know you hear me, Sam. I'm talking. That's how God do to me. He's like, I'm here. You asking me to speak. I'm here now. I'm telling you to do this. I need you to do that. He'll do a divine prompting. They said that God's voice will convict. He'll convict, but it will be in love. Like I've had times where God has told me to do something, and I know it's like, okay, yeah, I know. You're right. I got to change that. Like, it's never a situation where I'm spinning in negativity about myself. Like, oh, I can't believe. No, he'll put it on my spirit. Like, okay, you're doing this too much. You're right. Okay, you're right. I know. It's like it resonates with you. You know that God has been speaking to you about a certain area in your life. It's not new information. Your spirit knows. Right? So it's not anything that's going to condemn you. God's voice will encourage and reassure you. God speaks in the tone of faith. So he's going to say, there's going to be divine promptings. Like, I have had moments where I'm spinning in anxiety and just worrying and just getting lost in my doubts, right? And I'll spend time with God. I'll close the door with him and I'll just cry. I just cry out to him. And immediately, I can't even finish the tears. I'm in peace. Immediately. He encourages you. He reassures you, like, you're good. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. I'm here. I'm with you. I know this is scary. I'm right here. And he's been so gentle with me in this journey. Like, he knows I need reassurance. He knows that he needs to just kind of tap me like along the way. He just knows me so well. And I know that he's God and everything, but it's just this part of my, like, where I'm at right now it's a beautiful place to be. Because I just understand God so much more than I did before. God's voice will lead, guide, and still, while the enemy's voice will push and rush you. God's voice will calm you, like I said, give you peace in the midst of a storm. God's voice will bring comfort, whereas the enemy's voice will bring chaos and compromise, right? God's voice will bring clarity and confirmation. The enemy's voice brings confusion. God's voice will bring you closer to God. The enemy's voice brings controlling spirits. So understanding that the way that God speaks to us, again, is never, the enemy will try to come in and make it chaotic and confusing and all these things. But God's voice will still us. It will give us peace. It will reassure us. It will convict us, but it's not going to feel like somebody's like beating you up. That's not God. The enemy comes in and he's going to rush you and he's going to bring you guilt and condemnation. He's going to discourage. He's going to frighten you. He's going to push you and he's going to rush you. He's going to make you obsess and worry over things that are beyond your control. He's going to bring chaos and compromise where you're going to compromise in areas you know you shouldn't, right? He's going to make you feel like you can't, where God is prompting you or telling you to go, you're like, no, you know what? I'm just going to settle right here. I heard what God said, but I'm going to make it my own version of what God said. The enemy's voice brings confusion, for sure, y'all. There's been days where I will scream out in confusion, like literally. And then the enemy's voice brings controlling spirits. There's going to be a lot of times when it comes to us wanting control, us desiring to really be the God of our life, right? And here's the thing, that's natural. I think that I've learned over time that I'm not a good God of my life. I don't know everything. I'm easily deceived by my emotions. And because I understand this, I surrender. And I surrender probably 10 times a day because I'm like, God, I know that I know where I'm weak. I understand this. I understand that I am not always clear. I'm not always at the place where I need to be to spiritually discern what you're saying versus what I'm saying. I need you. I don't just want you. I need you. It's a real thing for me. It is a very, very real thing for me, family. And I think that sometimes we make our voice God's voice. But like I said, your voice is going to sound like rational, worldly logic. It's going to make sense to you. And a lot of times when God is calling you to something, it ain't going to make sense to you. It's going to give you peace, but it ain't going to make sense. And we cannot assume that when God calls us to do something, that is going to be easy. You're going to have peace in the storm, but that don't mean it's going to be easy. Every promise that God gave in the Bible had process. There was something that needed to occur. It was going to look like it wasn't going to happen. It was going to feel like it's not going to happen. It's going to be distractions. There's going to be perceived delays. It's going to feel like a dead end. But then there's the God of the impossible that comes in and does exactly what he always does. And you become God's display. You become God's display. And so for those of you who are being prepared in this journey, for those of you who are dealing and not understanding exactly what voice is speaking and whether you heard God or whether you heard you or whether you heard the enemy, I hope that today's episode gave you some clarity and insight. And again, if you're like, you know what, I made a decision and I realized it wasn't God, it was me. Welcome, y'all. Listen, welcome to life. Welcome to being a human being. There is no condemnation here. I'm not here to condemn you. All I'm here to do is that as God downloads things to me, I'm downloading things to you, hoping that, praying that this helps you, that this gives you clarity as you move forward in understanding who God is, how he speaks, so that you're not deceived, so that you're not spinning in chaos and confusion like I was about 2 weeks ago. Because now I'm like, okay, I know what that voice is. I know who's speaking there. I'm not going to let this deceive me. I'm not going to let this get to me because I know for beyond the shadow of a doubt, that's not who God is. That's not, God has stilled me here. So anything that's coming at me now is the enemy will flee. You resist the enemy, he'll flee and he'll come back at a more opportune time. When Jesus was in the wilderness and he was tempted by the enemy tried 3 times. Jesus resisted. The enemy fled, and it says he waited for a more opportune time. That is exactly how the enemy is. And y'all, sometimes we negate, we don't understand how hard it is sometimes. We overestimate our ability to really hear what God is saying. And there's a sense of humility in this walk, a sense of surrender in this walk, which is why you do have to have godly counsel. You do have to have people around you that are prayed up and can challenge you in a spiritual way. A lot of people, they don't want people to challenge them in a spiritual way. They think they're just a spiritual authority and can't nobody tell them nothing. And and that's not healthy. There's a surrender and an understanding of your humanness. We don't know everything. And there are blind sides to all of us based upon trauma, based upon how we were raised, based upon what drives us in making decisions. We have to be aware of that. And that's why we have to surrender and submit ourselves to godly counsel. Even with fasting, you fast and pray and you reach out to somebody that you know is further in the faith. That doesn't mean you're reliant upon them, because there's going to be a part where God's like, okay, they confirmed it. Now you move. You don't continue to stay reliant upon them. They've done their job. They've confirmed my word. Okay, cool. Now I need you to stand and I need you to walk this thing out in faith. I'm not going to let you make them your God where you're coming to them for answers that you need to learn how to come to me for. Right? So I know this is with a lot, but I truly hope that this was insightful and this helps you as you continue on this journey called life, right? This is not to condemn, again, you guys, not to condemn anyone, but this is just to give you clarity as I'm getting clarity in my own life. I love y'all. You know that, right? I love y'all. And we are walking this thing out, and God is moving through each and every one of us. And I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to be able to spend this time with you every week. Thank you for spending your time with us on Love Samantha Lee, the More Than Just Pretty podcast. It's been a privilege to share the space with you where we celebrate being unapologetically ourselves. I hope today's episode has encouraged you to embrace your own unique beauty and the beauty in others. Don't forget to follow us and join our community on social media. Share your journey and your insights, and let's continue this conversation, family. Until next time, remember, real beauty starts with you being true to yourself. I love you, family. And I'm going to talk to you soon.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.